Hello again, and welcome to this interview in the series that is all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to lay a strong foundation for health and happiness in our teenage girls. Today's interview is with Zen Honeycutt. She is the founder and director of Mums Across America, a national coalition of unstoppable mums. She's an international speaker and author. She is also the mother of 3 boys whose health issues improved when she avoided GMOs and related pesticides and switched to organic food. Like many mums across our planet, she started to question and ponder what the heck is happening to our health and the health of our kids. But unlike many of us, she has stepped up in a massive way. With a motto of empowered mums and healthy kids, I could not believe how lucky I was to get her as a speaker on this summit. Thank you so much, Zen, for being here.
Oh, certainly my pleasure, Edwina. Thank you to all your viewers. It's such a joy to be here.
So let's start with, what is the story behind Mums Across America? How did you come to be on this journey, Zen?
Well, like many mothers, I experienced health issues with my children, and that love for my children simply drove me to investigate what was happening. You know, there's a saying that goes that a worried mother does better research than the FBI, and I'm sure many of your viewers will be able to relate to that. And my children all had allergies. Some of them were life-threatening, starting from infancy. And my husband and I never had food allergies. And when my son almost died on Thanksgiving evening from pecans in the stuffing, it was extremely traumatic. Something I never wish that anyone would have to go through. But for a few years, he survived that, and we just thought we had to avoid peanuts and nuts and tree nuts and all of that. We were very resigned and very doubtful that anything could ever change. And so for years we did really nothing except for avoid nuts. But then one day my son said, "Mom, I wish all my allergies would go away." And I thought in my head, I said to him, "Yeah, me too, buddy." But I thought in my head, that's never going to happen. And then I heard myself, what was going on in my head. And I said, wait a second, that is resigned and doubtful. That is not empowering. And that's not what I'm committed to. I'm committed to my children being empowered. And so I thought, what if we could do something about this? And what if we could see this as an opportunity? And so I asked him, "Ben, would you like to, say, eat a slice of pizza one day a year from now?" And because he was allergic to gluten and carrageenan and nuts and all kinds of allergies by then. And he said, yes. And I said, well, then would you do whatever it takes? Would you drink green smoothies or go to alternative doctors, whatever it takes? And he said, yes. And I shook his hand and I said, then I promise you, you will get better. And that was scary because I didn't know how. But I did know that if I put myself on the line and if I created partnership with him and we had a promise that together we would do things that we never otherwise would have done. And that partnership and that promise just carried us through. I researched, I found out about GMOs and toxins in the food supply, which blew my mind. I felt completely betrayed, very upset. But we turned that anger and frustration into action. And within 4 months, my son's allergies were dramatically better by going GMO free. And then after we found out about glyphosate and toxins, which we'll talk about more, we went completely organic for about a year or two. And then we tested him again, and his allergies had gone from a 19 down to a 0.2. And he no longer has life-threatening allergies. So I have peace of mind. He has confidence. And during that time, I began to get active about GMOs and started to work on the Prop 65 labeling initiative with many other people. And when that failed, I asked myself, what could I do to raise awareness with as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time? Because I had seen the health changes in my son. I had seen not only his attitude improve and his skin improve and his overall learning ability improve, but I knew that our relationship and our confidence and our happiness in life had improved. And I wanted that for everybody. Yeah. So I asked myself, how can we reach as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time? And I thought of 4th of July parades. Here in America, we march on Independence Day in small towns all across the nation, which is much easier to get to than the White House, right? So everybody flying to the White House with moms, kids, strollers, probably not going to happen. So I thought of 4th of July parades, and the porta potties, the permit, and the police are already arranged by some local, probably grandma, right, that has arranged that with the city council. And so we just need to join in. We just red, white, and blue and join in, and big banner that says Moms Across America March to Label GMOs, and raise awareness. Have people ask, hey, honey, what's a GMO? And that all that needs to happen is for that question to come up. What is a GMO? And from there, it just started rolling. We had a reach on Facebook in 3 months of over 300,000 a week. We now reach 1.5 million a month just on Facebook alone. We're reaching hundreds of millions more through documentaries and series, and some TV and radio and podcasts and wonderful series like you're doing right now. And so the word is getting out across the world, and we have mothers across the world now raising awareness about GMOs and toxins in our food supply and many other places as well, which is vastly impacting our children. So that's just one part of how I get started.
Yeah, I noticed when I was doing a bit of research for this, there's a Mums Across Australia now that I think is probably born from what you've done.
Yes, very exciting. We're so happy to partner with Madge and Moms Across Australia and GMO Free New Zealand. I was able to do a 2-week tour in both countries. I was thrilled to meet the very dedicated, tenacious, and educated mothers in both Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah. We mums are going to change the world.
Oh yes, that's right.
So let's go back to those basics, because it's easy to throw around terms like GMOs, but some people, probably have an idea but don't really have an understanding. And I think that's a great place to start.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to explain it. Yeah. GMO stands for genetically modified organism. Yeah. And so that could mean a plant or an animal. Mm-hmm. And right now, the term GMO predominantly means that DNA from one species has been transferred into another species. But there are many GMOs where they're editing out new ones as well, where they're just editing out a gene, which is causing mutations as well. And there's GMOs which are engineered to either have a pesticide built right in, so when the bug eats it, its stomach explodes, or to be resistant to herbicides, so the farmers can spray the crops and the weeds die, but the crop does not. The problem with that is that the residue remains on the crop, and we're not genetically engineered to withstand the herbicide, right? And then the third one is the one I mentioned, where it's engineered for a desired trait, like a greener lettuce or redder tomato, and a gene is either edited out or sort of woken up. And so no pesticides are involved, but there still is a very surprising number of mutations, over 1,500 mutations with one gene edit with the new GMOs. So don't be fooled by all this talk about how these GMO 2.0 and new GMOs are going to save the day and are so much better than the old GMOs, because they are not proven safe, and they are actually showing to have over 1,500 gene mutations with one edit. So very scary stuff, in my opinion, because I have enough to worry about with homework and school and doctor's appointments and sports. I don't want to have to worry about feeding my child a food that may cause mutations, or expose them to toxic chemicals.
And it is just so pervasive throughout our food system now. This, glyphosate, which most people know as Roundup, is it called? You call it Roundup in America as well?
Yes, we do, but there are over 750 brands now of glyphosate-based herbicides because it's generic. So it's not just Roundup, it's Rodeo, and there's, Roundup Max and Roundup 360. There's many different types of brands. And I do have to say that the GMO that's engineered to withstand herbicides, 80% of those GMOs are engineered to withstand glyphosate-based herbicides. Yeah. It's a very large percentage. So when you and I talk about GMOs and glyphosate a lot, I want to explain to the viewers why. It is a very large percentage. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other toxic chemicals that are being used, like atrazine in our food supply is very high. It's been shown to cause sex hormone changes. Chlorpyrifos causes neurotoxicity. Dicamba and 2,4-D are extremely toxic. And because glyphosate-based herbicides are creating a weed resistance, or weeds are creating themselves to be resistant to glyphosate-based herbicides, the farmers are being encouraged by companies like Monsanto and Dow and DuPont and Syngenta to use toxic herbicides like 2,4-D and dicamba on a broader scale. And that is extremely concerning because not only are they toxic, but they cause harmful crop damage. So it's a great danger to farmers as well.
Yeah. Throughout this summit, we've had many people talk about gut health and the critical importance of gut health to our physical and mental well-being. And, when they sold Roundup to us, certainly in Australia, it was very strongly contested that, or uncontested, that it has no effect on our human genes. But then they did this, human genome project where they worked out that we've got like 24,000 human genes, but between 2 and 20 million microbial genes, the bacterial genes that glyphosate does affect. And this is the link, isn't it, in why it's causing such enormous damage to our health now.
Yes, this is really fascinating new science that I'm thrilled is being exposed through many wonderful doctors and scientists. We didn't know this, that phrase, like go with your gut or trust your gut instincts. It's so important. What we're learning is that the bacteria in the gut, some say good bacteria and bad bacteria, but really is just a variety of bacteria that all have an important role. But that balance of the gut bacteria is being destroyed by glyphosate, which is on our food. And those residues do not dry off, they do not cook off, and they do not wash off. We are ingesting glyphosate in our foods, predominantly in conventional foods, very small contaminations in organic foods, and in some cases, not in all cases, because it's so prevalent. It's contaminating so much of our food supply now. But in conventional foods, if you're not eating organic, basically, you are poisoning yourself with glyphosate-based herbicides and your family. And what happens is that the glyphosate goes into the gut, obviously, when you eat it on the food or sometimes in water as well, or beverages. And it has been shown to destroy the beneficial gut bacteria and allow for the proliferation of the pathogenic gut bacteria. And this is dangerous in many different reasons. Number one, the beneficial gut bacteria is the home of the immune system. It's also the home of serotonin and melatonin and tryptophan and guaranine, essential hormones to feel satiated, to feel happy, to be able to get sleep, to balance oneself in mood and perhaps not get bipolar disorder or, consider acts of violence. I mean, the gut is really very important for balance, for mood. And, a teenage daughter is going through a lot of mood swings, and we want to not, exacerbate that as much as possible. So the mood is very much connected to what's going on in the gut. In addition, when the pathogenic gut bacteria is being proliferated or allowed to proliferate, such as Salmonella and E. coli contributes to UTIs, which are extremely painful for any woman at any age. They also, on the outer walls of the pathogenic gut bacteria, have something called lipopolysaccharides, and their job is to alert the vagus nerve in the gut to tell the brain to go on attack. So the immunoglia cells in the brain go on attack because, it's bad guys attack, and they create glutamate, which doctors like Dr. Matthew Buckley has explained. Glutamate is an excitotoxin which can inflame the brain neurons and cause them to die. And this could be why all of a sudden many young people are suddenly developing tics or stammers or lack of eye contact, basically autism symptoms, and can be contributing to Alzheimer's or dementia, memory loss problems. And this is very scary indeed because, messing with the brain messes with everything, with our relationships, our learning, our performance. It is so important. So glyphosate is harmful in many ways. I have to add, not just in this way where it destroys the gut bacteria, but it's a chelator as well. And a chelator means that it holds or makes unavailable the vital nutrients of any living thing it touches.
Yeah.
Now, this essentially means it gives the plant AIDS. It gives it an immune system problem so that the normally harmless bacteria in the soil can kill it. So if we are weakening our children's immune system in this way by depriving them of the vital minerals and nutrients they need, should we really expect them to be acting and behaving normally? No, no, erratic behavior is going to be the norm. Learning disabilities, sleeplessness, the inability to grow properly, hormonal changes are going to happen. It's going to be a very dangerous situation to allow this to continue.
Yeah.
And in addition, there's endocrine disruption issues with glyphosate. It causes liver disease. I can easily say there's a study to prove that it causes non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And we're seeing that in America in children as young as 8 years old. And the studies show now that 1 out of 10 Americans now have some form of liver disease. Yeah. So it's very, very scary what's happening with the exposure to glyphosate.
Yeah. It is, it can feel very overwhelming and very scary to hear this information, but I like to talk about it as being enormously empowering, because the more that we can become aware of these things, and so many, whether we're talking about depression or whether we're talking about different autoimmune diseases or whatever the picture might be, the disorder that we might be facing, there's always lots of layers to it. But once we have these conversations and all the pieces of the puzzle start to come together, we've certainly got, supermarket whole aisles now with gluten-free products that are not necessarily so healthy. But, we do know that gluten is causing problems, and that's tied in with, glyphosates and our breads and all these different things. But it's just putting all these pieces of the puzzle together is so empowering, because we have the ability now to help our girls turn around, the health of the generations to come.
Yes, so, I do want to say that although it is scary, it is very empowering, and it's very exciting to learn why these things are happening and what's causing it. And it's also scary that the government is allowing it, right? That this is happening. But that shows me that it's all the more important for us to learn from each other and to share this information, and for your viewers to share this with their sisters and mothers and cousins and friends. Because once we learn this information, we can do something about it, and we can speak up and say, listen, we don't want these chemicals sprayed on our food anymore. We don't want our neighbors to use them in our backyards anymore. Roundup, it's a common weed killer used in backyard gardens. In America, I don't know if it's done this way there, but they spray it on our streets and sidewalks. They drive through with trucks and spray it on streets and sidewalks to prevent weeds from growing in our neighborhoods. I've gotten that stopped in my neighborhood. And many people can do that now across the country, and are doing it across the country and around the world. So it is so important to find out this information. And yes, and fear can motivate us. Like I was worried, I said the worried mom does better research than the FBI. A worried mom or a scared mom, it can absolutely empower us to take action.
Yeah. And that empowerment comes just through conversations like this. That's how it all starts, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's we just need to look at the lunacy of having to pay many hundreds or thousands of dollars to prove that food we have is not covered in chemicals, and yet foods that are covered in chemicals, that's cheap and easy to buy. It's just all back to front.
Yeah. Well, we're learning now. People are learning. They're becoming more aware, and they're saying, wait a second, maybe organic is worth it. Maybe it's time to take a look at the brands I'm buying, because listen, once you find another brand that is organic, it doesn't take you any more time to shop. Maybe the first 1 or 2 times you're switching those brands over, you're reading more labels, but after that, you find your brand, it's the same amount of effort as it was before. It's not a big problem. You absolutely can do it, and you'll see differences. If you go organic within 2 or 3 weeks, I can't promise, but I really feel very strongly that you will absolutely see differences. I've talked to doctors who have seen to 70 to 80% of their patients resolve or dramatically improve their health issues by going organic in just 2 or 3 weeks. So there's a lot of hope, but you do need to be informed and know why you're making this change, and also educate your daughters about this, involve them in that conversation, show them the movies Genetic Roulette, show them GMO OMG, show them Robin O'Brien's TED Talk about patriotism on a plate, or go to Moms Across America and show them a few of our videos. We have plenty of videos on YouTube as well. Let them learn for themselves, because when it's their choice and they see the difference in how they feel between eating organic and eating conventional food that's been sprayed with toxic chemicals or contains GMOs, they will make that choice on their own, and you will both have peace of mind.
Yeah. And who wouldn't want to, get rid of all those food allergies? And the story of your son that's amazing. We have certainly all these, nut bans and different foods that are completely banned across whole schools now because of the rising levels of food allergies, life-threatening food allergies in Australia.
Yes, I've been there, and I've actually seen on the wall the pictures of the children that the caregivers need to be able to refer to with their EpiPens on the wall. And in one school, I believe it was probably close to 36 children, out of maybe 300 or something like that. That's a very high percentage. And it's the same, if not worse, here in America. And, I really want to address this. I want people to consider that it's not that that food type itself, like wheat or nuts, are bad. It's what's been done to it.
Yeah.
And it's that our body is now recognizing those things as foreign invaders because what has been done to them. Either they've been sprayed with toxic chemicals and our bodies are saying, hey, no, but it also recognizes the nut protein at the same time, right? And so it says no to both of them. Or it's that the food has been genetically modified and our bodies are not, our children's bodies are not wanting to have those foreign proteins. The other thing I want to mention about gluten is that, wheat has been eaten for thousands of years by human beings. And, but what has not been eaten by thousands of years is gliadin, which is a modern protein in wheat. And that modern protein has been shown to be like nicotine in cigarettes, like it makes people want more. And also it's one of the proteins that most people are intolerant to. Like I myself am only intolerant to gliadin in gluten products, not the other, not the other proteins. So if I eat ancient grains, I'm fine. And if I eat organic ancient grains, I'm especially fine because they haven't been sprayed with glyphosate and other toxic chemicals. So I would urge people who are gluten intolerant to consider first switching to organic ancient grains.
Yeah.
They're healthier, they have more nutrients, they're the original heirloom seeds. They're the way bread was, back when Jesus was around, and fermented bread was the way, like sourdough bread. I would urge you to consider that switch first because gluten-free food has been found to have glyphosate levels as well. One of the major components is chickpeas. And garbanzo beans have been found to be very high in glyphosate. They spray it as a drying agent on garbanzo beans, on oats, on wheat, on peas, legumes. Sugar is sprayed with glyphosate as a drying agent. So there's many crops that are allowed to have glyphosate levels that are much higher. For instance, say 30 parts per million of glyphosate, when only 0.1 parts per million of glyphosate has been proven to destroy gut bacteria.
Yeah, right.
So,
right. Sorry.
That's okay. So it's very important to switch to organic, especially with grains.
Yeah. And, just to clarify that point on ancient grains with wheat, there's, wheats have been modified. So the ancient wheat grains are emmer wheat and, I've just gone blank. What's
kamut and einkorn.
Einkorn, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yes, spelt is an ancient grain.
Yeah.
So there are many different types of ancient grains, and most breads will say, made with ancient grains. So they're available and they're out there and they're delicious.
Yeah, they're great. So we don't have to give up bread for all the people that go into.
Most people, I have to say, not people with celiac disease. Yeah. It's not going to work, but with just with intolerances, you can.
Yeah. So we've focused a lot on food, but we know that glyphosate, it's not just in our food supply. There's other things that we need to be aware of. It's certainly sprayed very heavily on our cotton crops. I think is cotton one of the most highly sprayed?
Yes, yes. And unfortunately, I have to say that glyphosate testing has shown that glyphosate is in many different things. And to give you a little bit of a background on that, when my son had a sudden onset of autism symptoms, my doctor, who was an autism doctor, because we liked his spaced out vaccine schedule, he said, let's test him for fungus and bacteria in his urine. And I said, why? And he said, because fungus and bacteria can often lead to inflammation in the brain. which can cause behavioral issues. And I was like, wait a second, that's what glyphosate does. He tested very high for Clostridia and fungus. My doctor says he has holes in his small intestines. He has leaky gut, and it's dysbiosis. And he said most children in America have this now. They just don't have a mother that's testing them for it. And so this is another reason why I'm very intent on getting the word out about testing. So once I saw those high levels of fungus and bacteria, I was very intent on testing him also for glyphosate. And at that time, it just so happened that our farmer friend that I had been bugging for a couple years to try to convince a lab to invest in glyphosate testing was successful. So I was able to send my son's urine right around that time into a lab for glyphosate testing for the first time in America. And we got glyphosate testing on urine, tap water, and then for the first time in the world on breast milk. And the levels came back, very disturbing. 70% of the water, the majority of the children, that were tested had levels of glyphosate. My son had 8 times more glyphosate in his urine than was found anywhere in Europe. The levels of glyphosate in breast milk were 3,000 times higher than has been shown to cause sex hormone changes in Seralini's rat studies. It was extremely disturbing. And but what we did about it was we went all organic with my son. He eliminated sugar because sugar can feed bad gut bacteria. We introduced sauerkraut and fermented foods. He had colloidal silver, and he did have to take an antifungal. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of compound medicines, but he did take an antifungal, and it was $650 a month. So for anybody who says that organic is too expensive, just consider a bill of $650 a month just for one medication for your child. But after 6 weeks, we retested him, and his glyphosate levels were no longer detectable, and his autism symptoms were gone.
Wow.
And since then, many different organizations have tested for many different things. GMO Free USA and Food Democracy Now! And Sustainable Pulse and Alliance for Natural Health have tested things such as, or even the FDA tested and found honey positive for glyphosate, cereals, snacks, crackers, chips, beverages, beer. In Germany, they tested beer. We've tested wine. It's positive for glyphosate. Sanitary napkins and tampons and vaccines even are positive for glyphosate because the animals eat the grains, which then get made into ground up into gelatin, and gelatin is a stabilizer for glyphosate, a stabilizer in vaccines. And so we're very concerned about this widespread contamination of glyphosate in our food and water and sanitary products and things like vaccines, because it can break down the blood-brain barrier and allow toxins into the brain that normally wouldn't be able to harm the brain. Yes. So we are very concerned about many different health issues, including behavioral and learning issues and autism symptoms because of the impact of toxins that our children are experiencing.
Gosh, it's just, so many of these things that have been part of our culture for sometimes hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years. And now we're seeing this escalation so quickly, it can't possibly be genetics, so quickly. And it's, now piecing together what's actually behind that as something like glyphosate and, Roundups that we, have used so prolifically in our backyard, believing that they're safe. Certainly on our sporting fields where our kids play, all these different places, and it's coming in through so many different ways. It's really interesting to now sort of be piecing that puzzle together and understanding what might be behind some of this.
Yeah, it's disturbing to consider all of those different factors, but once you're like, wait a second, maybe organic pads and tampons are very important to invest in for my teenage daughter, because I don't want that endocrine disruptor anywhere near her reproductive organs. Yeah. It's been shown to cause larger size of uterus in rats and pigs. It may be connected even to the fibroids and all the different cysts and things that are happening there. It is very important to consider the endocrine disruption. What that means is it can halt or harm the development of a fetus and change sex hormones. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I want to address is that when a teenager is going through sex hormone changes anyway, through going through puberty, when you start messing with that and throwing it off, I'm very suspect of it contributing to transgender issues and confusion. that's going on with sexual identity. And I'm not saying it's causing it, but I'm very concerned about it, especially when you see things like atrazine has caused male frogs to mate with each other. You know, there must be something going on with the endocrine disruption there. And my biggest concern about that is not that it's that transgender issues, it's that the 50% of transgender teenagers attempt suicide. The depression is that is just unacceptable to me, that any child of any gender or would feel that depressed about themselves that they would attempt their life, because their life is precious and our children are precious, and this type of tragedy should not be happening. And so I'm very concerned about plastics, endocrine disruptors, the exposure of these toxic chemicals to our children, especially near the reproductive organs, especially, you know, in their blood, in their bodies. We need to really pay attention to this and detox our children and eliminate the exposure of these toxic chemicals and replenish their bodies with trace minerals and vitamins that are not only depleted in the food supply because of the chemical farming, but is being chelated out of their bodies because of the effects of glyphosate. So there's a couple of things to do, but once you start doing them within 2 or 3 weeks, you know, removing the toxins from the body and exposure, replenishing the body with the minerals, detoxing, you know, these types of things, eating fermented foods if you can, organic yogurt, organic miso, sauerkraut, things like that. You really can start to protect and restore the environment in the gut. And I believe you're going to see a healthier, happier teenage daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. And an empowered one that gets to, you know, make decisions about her future and the future of her children and so on.
Yes, that was the biggest factor for me in learning about GMOs and glyphosate, was when I saw a study that said that the third generation of rats that were eating glyphosate were no longer able to reproduce. I thought, you know what, this has got to stop. We have got to transform the food industry, because I want my sons to be able to procreate someday. Yeah. And I want I want all the, you know, their future spouses to be able to procreate. So that means it's not enough for my family to eat organic. This is a community issue. I want all of the young women out there to be able to be healthy, to be able to procreate if they would like to, for my sons to be able, and for them to be able to experience the profound love that it is to have one's own child, if they want to. It's an extraordinary experience. And you know, their reproductive organs, especially during the formative years, are very, very important to protect. And when young women start to learn about the food supply, right? When they really learn what's going on with the food supply, even though it can be depressing at first, they can start to make choices. You know, my son is now strictly organic. Like, he will go to McDonald's for a treat with Boy Scouts and sit there and eat nothing. Yeah. And he's also vegan now, and that's his choice. And he's being very vigilant about it. And he's very strong and healthy and confident. And I really support his choices to make those food choices. The rest of our family's not vegan, but we have eliminated meat in many, you know, we've decreased the amount of meat that we eat. And I think this is especially helpful for some people, because so many of the meat sources are being fed GMO feed, sprayed with glyphosate, very high levels of antibiotics and hormones. And so I think some people feel healthier just because they're eliminating toxic meat. Not that meat is bad, but that they're eliminating another source of toxins. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've certainly seen a massive swing here in Australia. You know, we've sort of done this huge paleo movement where everybody was going or eating all meat and just about nothing else, and now we're seeing this massive swing to being vegan. And I do question, I think we seem to have the need to do these massive swings in all sorts of different directions, and just being more focused on the quality of the food that we're eating, and being really focused on whether it's produced ethically or not, is probably should be the starting factor. Well, it's a starting factor for me when I think about what we're eating.
Yes, it's very important. And one thing that your viewers should know is that when we tested children that were eating organic and gluten-free and vegan and vegetarian, we were dismayed to find that some of their levels were higher than people who were eating conventional food. And the reason for this is because the ingredients in vegan and vegetarian food are among the crops that are the most highly sprayed with glyphosate. Chickpeas, oats, white beans, black beans, and sugar are highly sprayed with glyphosate. So if you're eating vegan and vegetarian, it is extremely important that it's also organic. Otherwise, you are exposing yourself to the highest levels of glyphosate. Same with, vegetarians that, are eating crops that are sprayed with glyphosate. Even, potatoes and carrots can uptake glyphosate from the roots. So, and if you're eating a lot of wheat and it's not organic, I'm sorry, you're eating some of the highest levels of glyphosate. And a bowl of oatmeal, very high levels of glyphosate. So eating healthy, the definition of eating healthy has changed. And what really will empower young women is to find out the truth about what's going on in our food supply, because our food is the number one factor of our health. And if we start seeing health issues in our children, even if it's crankiness and dark circles under the eyes or eczema or, grades that are slipping and dropping, please don't just say that's a phase. That's what we started to think with my son when he had autism symptoms. My family members said, oh, it's just a phase. And I looked him in the eye and I saw that anger and hurt and frustration. And I said, no, there is something going on with him. And I'm going to take him and get him tested for fungus and bacteria like the doctor suggested, and look further into this. So please do trust yourselves and your bodies, and know that your daughter's best. And if they are acting, off a little bit, please don't just say that's just a phase.
Yeah. I think because of the rise in ill health, we have normalized so many things, whether it's recurring headaches or whether it's insomnia or whether it's eczema, or we've normalized these things as just, I've got it, so I've just got to manage it, rather than looking behind and looking for causes and cures.
Yes, a lot of people think, I was guilty of it when my son had a rash that was around his mouth for on and off for weeks. First thing I thought was, let's put a cream on it and hope it goes away. And that's what doctors usually say. Let's slap a cream on it, hope it goes away. And, we'll see you later some other time. Well, it hurt. It didn't work. And it was just a treatment of a symptom. It was not a solution to the cause. So I encourage people to continue to look for the cause. Now, everybody has different things going on with their gut. For some people, I remember in Australia, I met for the first time some women that talked about FODMAPs and different, foods that they can't eat, which meant they couldn't eat garlic and fermented foods like cabbages and onions. And I was like, whoa, it's a whole nother realm now, of food allergies. But there are different people that can or cannot eat different types of things, or some people can eat nightshades. There are other people who are having trouble with, grains and meat, but just consider going organic first before you, eliminate everything out of your diet. I would say, consider going organic first and educating yourself about what's going on with the food supply. And I think you'll see some great changes in mood and sleep and health and empowerment.
I know there's going to be lots of mums that might feel overwhelmed with the idea of switching everything to organic immediately. So to do it in a slower, progressive, step by step, what are the most highly sprayed crops that perhaps we could start with substituting for organic?
Great. Yes, that's a good question. So oats, wheat, sugar, and then I believe that white beans and black beans.
And soy's up there as well, isn't it? I think.
Well, the residues on soy were not as high as we expected. Even corn, soy and corn, they were not as high as they expected. I believe because they have husks and shells and, things like that. It's the wheat that it's directly sprayed, right? So whole wheat grains had the highest levels. Oats had the highest levels because they're directly sprayed and it absorbs right in. And then peas and beans, things that are dried, are highly sprayed. So I would also avoid, soy and corn as much as possible and buy that organic. But soy and corn are also in so many products, it's extremely difficult. I would really start with switch out that oatmeal, because, you know, that's something that a lot of people have for breakfast every day, or, you know, many days, and switch out that bread. That is so important, to switch out your bread to organic.
Yeah.
And dairy, like eggs, have been found to be high in glyphosate. And I'm guessing that dairy is as well. We're just having detectability problems with milk because of the proteins and the fats. So I would also personally switch out, you know, your dairy, any dairy that you're having for with organic. But you take it one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't eliminate everything, you know, that you suspect, I would please at least introduce sauerkraut. A raw organic sauerkraut has 1 trillion good bacteria in 1 tablespoon. That is something you can do. There's a great website by this woman called Donna Schwenk. It's called Cultured Food Life. And she's one of the happiest people I met. And I swear it's because she's taking care of her gut bacteria. And she eats fermented foods, or cultured foods, every day. And she makes kefir water and kombucha and kefir cheese and all kinds of fermented vegetables. And it's just a great resource for a website to learn how to start making fermented food that's very inexpensive and can really benefit you in many ways. So rather, if you're really on a budget, I mean, buying a head of cabbage and learning how to make sauerkraut is way cheaper than, you know, perhaps switching out everything in your pantry right away. But you can start with that.
Yeah. And with the fruit and vegetables as well, that's, you know, just looking for things that have got a thicker skin on them, that are, you know, like avocados and bananas and oranges are probably a safer bet than things like carrots and things that are grown in the soil.
Yes, the strawberries and apples were shown to have some of the highest numbers of pesticides, like 52 different varieties of pesticides. And the reason why that's you know, important to avoid is not just because of the sheer numbers, but because the combination of those pesticides has never been tested. And the same thing with glyphosate-based herbicides. The safety studies, when people say, "Oh, it's as safe as table salt," this is safe and that is safe. Well, it's the glyphosate's never used alone. So there may be safety studies just on glyphosate by the industry, by the way. That's a very limited study, and they may have thrown out dead rats, for example, which is being reported by EPA whistleblowers. But the overall formulation, which is how it's used on our food, glyphosate is never used alone. It's used with co-formulants. Those final formulations have never been proven safe. I have personally been to the EPA and I've asked them, do you have any final formulation studies with long-term animal studies with blood analysis on the final formulations of Roundup? And they said, how many, you know, which one? There's many of them. I said, any of them. And they said, no, not that we're aware of. So anybody that's going to tell you, any farmer, any health officer that's going to tell you that glyphosate is safe, or that small amount is safe, is completely speaking from an unfounded scientific basis. It's completely unfounded. And to address the amount, by the way, I want to say that 1 part per trillion was found to grow the cells of breast cancer in vitro. So that's a nano particle. It's a very, very tiny amount. So when we're talking finding 1.87 parts per million of glyphosate in oatmeal, you know, that's a much higher level, and we should be concerned about it. And we should be saying to our government and our policymakers that we want glyphosate banned. We do not want this contamination, and we don't want chemical farming altogether. We don't want toxic chemicals sprayed on our crops. We don't want them sprayed in our neighborhoods or our parks or our streets. Yeah. We want safe, non-toxic neighborhoods and states and counties and provinces. And it's time to have that. It's time for women and of all ages to stand up and say that we want a safe community, and to eat food that's non-toxic.
And, you know, I do so strongly believe that it is up to us mums to turn this around, because big corporation aren't doing it, and they're not going to do it unless we stand up. And you know, the power is in the money that we spend, and, you know, whether it's educating ourselves online. We've never had access to so much information in our lives as we do now, with everything that we can access on the internet. It's amazing. And, putting that pressure on. We want our, everything that we're consuming, whether it's bread, whether it's vaccines, we all want it to be as non-toxic and as healthy as possible. And it's up to us to speak up, step up, like you have, Zen.
We moms buy 85% of the food. So
Yep.
who has the power? We do. Women make 90% of the household choices. So it's important to tell your daughters, listen, you have the future of the economy in your hands.
Yeah.
If we don't give them our money, these chemical corporations cannot poison us. They only have the power and money that they have right now because, unfortunately, we've been giving it to them. We've been buying GMO food for almost 20 years. I didn't know about it for the first 9 years of my son's life. We've been buying plastic and junk and fast food, and I call it, we've been stricken by the disease of ease. We want everything fast and tasty and hot and now, and or savory. It's just not healthy for us. When we're consuming cheap products, we're going to have basically cheap health. We're going to have cheap bodies, So we want to teach our daughters to, maybe I don't have daughters right now, but I was a daughter. And one of the most important things, the messages I think to teach our daughters is to value themselves and to value their bodies. Yeah. And what I'm seeing in my son, especially my oldest one, is that his body is important to him. He's a runner now. He wants to take care of his body. And as soon as he knew that he wanted to be a runner and to grow food and to, he's into primitive skills, living out in the wild and all that, and to be a holistic naturopathic doctor. As soon as he learned, he knew what he wanted to do. That changed everything. We no longer had to ask him about doing his homework. He powered through, he did it. We no longer had to bug him about his being responsible or getting off the phone or, anything like that. He is responsible and focused and determined because he knows what he wants to do. So I would encourage moms out there to not just have conversations with your daughter about what they should do, about what they should eat and what they should wear, how they should dress. I would set that all aside and I would ask them, what would you like to do? What problem would you like to solve? Where would you like to go someday? How do you imagine your life to be? The more that you can create that future, that vision for them, like I did with my son, would you like to be able to eat a slice of pizza at a birthday party someday, a year from now? He had that vision in his mind and he said, yes, I want that. After that, it was easy to create partnership with him and to have that happen. He didn't even want the slice of pizza a year later. He could have eaten it and he did eat, wheat now and then, but he's gotten to the point now where he won't eat anything that's not organic. He's making choices for himself that not only make him stronger, but give me peace of mind because he knows what he wants. So I think that is really a key to empowerment, is to sit and listen to your daughter talk about what does she want, how does she want her life to be, and support it. Don't say it can't happen. Don't say, don't try to fix it or be like, let's do it another way, or that, we don't have the money for that. Just whatever she says and how she wants her future to be interested and ask her more about it. And what would that be like? And how would that be? And oh, that's so interesting. And, really just let them create and paint that future and that vision for themselves. And you'll see her begin to blossom and grow and accomplish things that you never imagined, or she even never imagined before.
The way that I've achieved that in my house is doing vision boards. And, I've actually run classes for mums and for teenage girls in our community. And it is about providing them with a space to dream of what they want their future to look like, whether it's in 6 months, 12 months, or well into the future. And they create these beautiful vision boards, and my girls have both got them hanging on their walls. And it just helps, when you don't feel motivated, or when you don't, you get lost in everything that's no good today, having that physical vision of who you want to become in the future, what you want to achieve, it's can be very empowering, and it's easy to do. It's fun to do.
It's wonderful. And I'd say I do that as well. And I've achieved almost everything on my vision boards the past 2 years. it's even like a trip to Japan and, a greenhouse and gardening and, really wonderful things have happened when you set that intention and you allow yourself that creativity and you say, I can create my life the way I want it to be. So that means, as parents, us stepping back and just being like, okay, what do you want to create and how do you want that to be? It's your life. I want to support it. And I'm also going to support you with healthy food, right? So that means if you're going to go to a party, that means being willing to say, okay, I'll make some organic pizza for you and a cupcake to take with you to that party. It takes more work, but they are armed. They're going there with their organic food and they will feel better. And I always say to my children, we go to a party or a friend's house, we're celebrating, say, Joshua, right? His birthday, not the food. We have our food, we're bringing our food, but when we go there, we're going to celebrate Joshua and be there and, give him his presents and have a lot of fun. And it may seem mean to some people, but the thing is that food for some children is no longer a treat, it's a threat.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we see it in that light, that it does threaten their health. And we don't need to be scared of it. We just need to take action to support them to be able to have that healthy food whenever they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Zen, I know we're almost out of time. I know that you have a new book coming out and you have a free gift for our audience that is part of that. Did you want to take a minute to tell everyone what that is?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. My book coming out in early May is called Unstoppable: Transforming Sickness and Struggle into Triumph, Empowerment, and a Celebration of Community. And I'm excited to offer a free download of a chapter called How to Talk About GMOs and Toxins, because so many of us struggle with talking to our family or our friends or perhaps even strangers, school principals or food directors or scoutmasters or whichever about GMOs and toxins. And we want to make that difference. We don't want to be rude about it. We don't want to be pushy. We don't want to seem weird. There's a lot of emotions that can come up because, that's Aunt Sarah's favorite casserole dish. She always makes that. Do you really want to mess with talking to her about that? But when we do, and it comes from love, we can be very effective. So I give you 5 tips on how to do that. And if you go to momsacrossamerica.org /book sign up, momsacrossamerica.org /book sign up, then you can get that free download of the chapter of my book. And I hope you'll support the book when it comes out in May. The majority of the proceeds go to Moms Across America. And we've created a publishing house. So we are also looking for other authors who would like to publish their books about health and anything that supports, families with having good health. So I'm very excited. It's a labor of love. The first section is called Unstoppable Love, and it's about my story and mom's story with testimonials. The middle section is called Unstoppable Community, and that's about all of the experts that have contributed to this raising awareness about the issue. And the last part is called Unstoppable Leadership, and that's about how you can become a leader in your family or your town or community or in the world for transforming the food supply and the health of our countries. So I really invite you to check it out. It's a very personal book as well. I tell a lot of very personal stories, which I hope you'll find very interesting and hopefully inspiring to take action.
Zen, you are inspiring and you are an extraordinary example of an unstoppable mum. And thank you so much for the interview today. I feel very privileged to have had this opportunity. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Edwina, and thank you to all your viewers. I really am so grateful that the word is getting out. It's people like you that give me hope and encouragement to keep going. And I do want to add, you can go to momsacrossamerica.org for more information. We are your partners in creating healthy communities, and we will not stop. We will not give up, because the love for our families will never end. So we're here with you.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. Bye.